Good day, poker peeps. This is Sky with Smart Poker Study. In this video, I'm going to help you build a habit of range thinking. Now, we all know that one of the goals in poker is to play the player. You are not just playing your hand and the board, your opponent's player type, their position, their stack size, their bet sizes, the range of hands that they can hold. Those all should have an impact on your decisions. Now, it's pretty tough to go from just thinking about your hand and the board to putting your opponent on a range. So in this video, I'm going to show you the easiest way to do that. Now, there are three things that you need to build a habit of range thinking. Thing number one is 20 minutes of daily study time. Now, I highly recommend that you do this kind of work as a pre-session warm-up. By warming up and putting your opponents on range after range, it's going to make range thinking top of mind, so as soon as you start your session, you're just already programming yourself to be there, thinking about their range as opposed to just your hand and the board. The next is you need a database of hands, and that's what we have here with Poker Tracker 4. And then you're going to need Flopzilla Pro. This is the best software to put your opponents on a range of hands, and also to see how that range interacts with the board. There are 3 steps to this process, and I highly recommend that you pause the video right now, open up Flopzilla Pro and Poker Tracker 4 as well to do this work, because action is the greatest teacher. Just watching this video, sure, it's some good stuff for you to learn, but what's more important is that you take action, do the work for yourself. That's what's truly going to build this habit of range thinking. So step 1 is to find 20 hands related to an area of focus, and it is so easy to do when you have a program like Poker Tracker 4 that records all of your hands. Let's imagine, for example, you're having trouble defending the blinds versus open raisers, so you really want to train yourself to think about the open raisers range. First off, just run a filter for that situation. You can see right here, defending the blinds by calling a 2-bet, we have 123 different hands to go through. If I do 20 hands a day, that's 6 days of study just by looking at this month's pre-flop calls. Next, you're going to open up a hand and you're going to put your opponent on a pre-flop range based on all the information available. You're going to think about their player type, their statistics, the history that you have with the opponent, maybe like any showdown hands in the past. Think about their position, think about their actions, whether they open raise, they limp and then call, they 3-bet, and their bet size as well. So let's do that with this 8-7 offsuit hand. The under-the-gun player decides to open raise to 2.6 big blinds. He is under the gun, but because we have a player missing, he is in the MP. Now, his specific position, that might affect the range that we put him on. He is a 21/22 player, 3-bets at 25%, no calls so far, and only raising first in. It is 3 out of 13, a very small sample, but we can rightly assume that he is a loose aggressive player. We get a few folds, and before we call, let's see what we think this player is open raising with. Now, here's a tip for building their range. Start with a percentage and then add or subtract hands based on the player. Now, when I look at this player, loose aggressive, he is in the MP. He's not in one of the general cutoff or button or even small blind steal positions. So I'm going to think an MP player, loose aggressive, he might be raising with a 20% range. So let's put in 20% right here. Just hit enter. Now, looking at this range, I think there's easily some hands we can add to his range. If he's raising with pocket 4s, he's probably doing it with 3s and deuces as well. No reason for him to leave those off. If he's open raising ace-3 suited, sure, why not ace-deuce suited, right? If he's going as far or low as 10-9 suited, I think he probably has a 9-8, an 8-7, and a 7-6. We see loose aggressive players open raising with these hands all the time. We have all the broadways in. Maybe he would open with ace-9 offsuit, maybe even one offsuit connector right here. And I see players like this often open raise with like a king-7 suited. So look at that. We started with 20%, but we added some hands that we think a player like this would open raise. Boom, we're up to 25% now. Tip number 2, save the range for future use. So we have raise first in ranges right here. Highlight this, hit add range, and then simple 25%. Once you accept it, boom, that range is there. Let's clear it. Let's double click it. We always have this for any future range assigning. If we think somebody's open raising with a 25% range, we double click it, but then maybe we tailor it by adding and subtracting hands that we think this specific player is playing this way. Now, this is still part of step 2 right here. I want you to enter your hand strength in. So we have ace of hearts and 7 of spades. Our hand versus this pre-flop open raising range, They have 65% equity. We can click this right here. Data for the hand, we have 35% equity. Not a ton of equity, but let's see what happens when the flop hits. We decide to defend, and the flop comes down ace, 10, 10. This is step 3. Enter the flop, see how well their range interacts with that flop. So we have the ace of hearts, 10 of spades, and the 10 of clubs. Well, we can see our equity dropped big time to 14% because we hit absolutely nothing. That flop was no good for us. But for our opponent right here, he hits top pair or better, and an open-ended straight draw, 0% because nothing is possible. But he does have some gut shots. He's basically hitting this board 65% with a kind of a decent draw on this board, at least a decent draw, and then top pair or better. So with our huge drop in equity and how often he's hitting the flop, this flop, it's really ugly for us, right? But let's continue reviewing the hand real quick. We check, and he checks behind. Holy cow, he probably doesn't have a top pair or better. Not even a gut shot draw, because oftentimes in position on a scary board, a loose aggressive player is going to c-bet. He didn't c-bet though, right? Well, on the 6 of clubs, if we enter that one in, sure, our equity jumps up a tiny bit because we picked up a gut shot draw, but that is not the reason we come out firing here. We came out firing because his range interacted so well with this board. Remember, 65% of the time, but he didn't bet. He's telling us he is mega weak. We come out and fire, and then boom, he folds. Now, you could just say, hey, he checked behind on the flop. Of course we're going to bet. We're not even thinking about his range. That could be one way to approach the hand, but you're better off thinking about his range. What would bet on that board? He's checking back all of his non-aces, his non-tens, his non-gut shots, any kind of undercards, maybe even king 7 suited without a backdoor draw. Those are all checking. They're probably going to fold to a bet. Boom, we made the bet. Utilizing a little bit more information than just his check, we put him on a weak range, and we ended up taking that one down. Now, because he folded before the river, we didn't get to see showdown. We didn't get to actually confirm if his hand is within this first range right here. So on Flopzilla Pro, hit Control N to clear everything. Let's move to another hand that you can see this one actually went to showdown. We'll double click it. We've got the king 7 suited. Let's see the action. 3 folds and then the button open raises. Small blind folds as well. Before we call, let's go ahead and put him on a pre-flop range based on what we know. We don't know much about him, but he only has 86 big blinds. He didn't auto top off after losing some chips, so we can probably think that he is a recreational player. Maybe he's very aggressive. It's a very small sample of 4 hands. So in this instance, we don't have a ton of information on our opponent, but at the stakes that you play, you see players open raise on the button all the time. What do you think they're open raising with? Now you can put them on a range in one of 2 ways. We can double click that 25% and now add or subtract hands. But let's do this kind of the same way that we did before. We're going to put them on a range. I think a player like this is raising probably 35% of hands in the best position when it's folded to him. So we're at 35%. I often see players raise the 6-5 suited, the 8-6 as well. If he's raising ace-5, he's not going to skip out on ace-3 or ace-4, ace-3, and ace-deuce as well. And I often see these hands raising. So I'm actually liking this range, a 40% range from an unknown player, but we're just basing his range right now on what we know about button open raisers at the stakes we play. Let's go ahead and save this. Highlight, raise first in range, add range, 40%. And so now this is our new 40% range that we can pull up at any time. Our king 7 suited of spades, we actually have 46% equity. Pretty decent. You can see a ton of weaker queens, jacks, all the unpaired suited connectors and whatnot. Even the pocket pairs that are below our 7, we have a bit of equity against them. 46%, not too shabby right now. Let's see what happens on this flop. Ace, 8, 4. Okay, we drop down to 31%. Backdoor flush draw. I guess a backdoor straight draw with our 7, right? Not much equity right now in this hand. We check, and he checks behind. Probably a weak range. He probably does not have an ace right now. The turn comes the deuce of diamonds. Our equity, well, 29%. Not all that great. But hey, he showed weakness like in that prior hand. He probably does not have an ace. Let's come out firing. 2/3 pot. Oh, crap, he calls. Maybe he has a flush draw. Maybe he just has a straight draw with a 3 or a 5 as well. Maybe he has an 8 that just doesn't want to fold. That 5 comes on the river, putting 4 to the straight. Let's actually enter it here. Our equity is still pretty low at just 29%. But, we decide to shut down. We just don't think maybe he slow played an ace and just didn't want to bet. He checks as well. He ends up showing us pocket 6s. And hey, that is in that first range. But maybe we made a little mistake right here. Maybe we should have barreled, because the fact that this range did not bet on the ace high flop, he probably didn't have an ace. I bet you we could have gotten him to fold on that river 5. So take note of any potential mistakes that you make, so the next time you play, you can work to not make those mistakes. So obviously, it's time for you to take action and do a 20-minute study session, finding about 20 hands or so, go through this exact same practice, start building the habit of considering your opponent's range with every hand that you're dealt. And again, I highly recommend you doing this as a pre-session warm-up. Future Sky breaking in. Now, after editing the video, I realized I have a really good tip for you to help build the habit of range thinking by helping yourself visualize your opponent's ranges in game. So you just did a full 20-minute study session where you created a lot of different raising first in ranges. What I recommend that you do, put it on the Flopzilla readout right here. Use your nifty snipping tool. Take a snippet of it. We are recording the range itself along with the percentage. You can even put in right here 25%. So it's quick and easy. You don't have to look at that tiny little text right there. What you could do is you could have a ton of these open on the screen just as screenshots in your snipping tool as you play. But even better than this tip is open up Word and hit Control V, boom. That range is pasted. You could put in the 25, the 40, the 15, the 55% range, whatever ranges that you created. Now you have this open as you play. So you can imagine as you're playing, you're not supposed to have something like Flopzilla Pro open. So you have a document with all these different ranges that you already pre-built on it. And you use this to visualize your opponent's range as you play. Imagine I'm playing a real game, king, queen offsuit in the big blind. We get a couple of folds. A 23-19 player on the button decides to open raise. We get a fold right here, and then before we make our call, we look at our range sheet and find the range that corresponds. Now, I wouldn't put a player like this on a 25% range, but let's just imagine 25% right now for this player. Okay, this is his range. My king, queen, yeah, I'm ahead of a ton of hands in his range. Got lots of equity versus his pairs. Let's see a flop. So I decided to call. When the flop comes 10-7-4, now you have the range right in front of you, the flop in front of you. You can visualize in your mind, okay, he's got a ton of ace high, king high, and queen high that hit nothing on this board. He's got a few smaller pocket pairs than this. He has a set of 7s, 4s, set of 10s, and he has some overpairs, of course, in his range as well. I think I could probably get him to fold at some point. So you check, and then he checks as well. Seems like he's weak. He might have a ton of these ace high and king high hands. Well, on that turn, what should I do at this point? Well, good. I hit a top pair hand, right? So I come out firing for a value bet. But you can see how visualizing his range right here with a simple screenshot that you did before you played your session, it's going to help you make such better decisions and better reads on your opponents. So do this before you play your session, and if you just have 4 ranges on it, a 10, a 20, a 25, and a 40, you're pretty good. That's going to encompass most of your opponent's kind of standard open raising ranges. Now, if you're really intent on turning yourself into the best player you can possibly be, I highly recommend my Play the Player 7-day bootcamp. Through the 7 days at 2 hours per day, you're going to build the skills of playing the player, putting them on a range, making reads, utilizing their statistics to understand them, and making exploitative plays along with a ton of other stuff. This is the bootcamp you need to begin playing the player. Just check out the link in the description down below, or of course, here's the URL for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you like the video, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.